love a good crisis around here. We're never going to let them go to waste.
Oh, yes.
I mean, we are going to just hammer them home when we get them. And there's no bigger crisis in the NBA than the one happening in Philadelphia. So we had to get our man, Sam Amick, senior national NBA writer. He's the guy who's got all the behind the scenes info. Sam, welcome back to the show. We want to jump right in here because this is, I mean, there is so much smoke coming out of there right now. The building's on fire.
It's fire at this point.
The building is on fire. We can see the smoke from miles away. We know all the story now. At this point, they had the players and coach meeting post game. It took forever for them to have this time. Tyrese Maxey calls out Joel Embiid on being late. Numerous other things, maybe Tyrese Maxey showing his leadership of the team there. But this is 13 games into the season that we're already having like a team meeting. Joel has not looked great in the very few games that he's played. It's a giant mess, Sam. What do you make of it from being able to read the tea leaves, see a little bit on the inside, and then obviously all the stuff you know on the outside?
Yeah, guys, it is a mess. I would say, man, if I was advising the Sixers as an unpaid consultant, I would say if you just would have done your media responsibilities after the game first and then had the team meeting, then none of this probably gets out. Because, you know, when you don't talk to the media for an hour after the game, which is what happened, there are rules in place that, you know, kind of raises alarm bells and all the reporters on hand scurry around and try to figure out what's going on. Now
all the reporters at home. We were talking about, it's been an hour. What's going on there?
Well, and that's the thing. It's like you see the tweet. I saw it from Gina Mizell. Shout out to her new Blue Sky account, Philly Inquirer. Like she put that out there. And then, you start making phone calls and trying to figure it out. So interesting times indeed. Tyrese Maxey decides to take the microphone, so to speak, with the team and tell the big fella that he's just not, being the leader that he needs to be. And you're talking about timeliness and professionalism and just the way that you move off the court. So that is such an interesting choice for me to see Tyrese make, because he's 5 years in, he's 24 years old. To me, it's him sending a pretty, direct message that it's time for somebody to lead this group. And I applaud him for it. And the best thing, and to his credit, is that Tyrese and Joel, by all accounts, are very tight and remain very tight. And that Joel, is looking in the mirror to an extent here. And that, he gives Tyrese that kind of, that kind of, space to have that voice, because they had mutual respect. But 2-11 is just wild. I don't know how else to say it. I can't believe that they've lost this many games. I know the East is not as good as we thought it was going to be. Maybe they can catch up here a little bit, but tough times.
3 games back of 6. 3 games back.
Luckily it's the East, right?
No, it's interesting you talk about the Maxey and Embiid relationship, because clearly they're on good terms. But it also, in the article that you wrote, it was Embiid voicing a bit of a frustration about what he had to do on the offensive end. What part of that is just him getting his feet wet and getting back into rhythm versus maybe something structurally with what's going on offensively?
I don't have a great sense of what his frustrations are schematically. The only thought I had there is that if you go back to last year when Nick Nurse was new on the job, Nick wasted very little time making it clear that he was going to try to push Joel to be at his best. So you remember the little subplot about how the Sixers decided to go have training camp all the way in Fort Collins, Colorado, which by all accounts, and I was actually there was like a little passive aggressiveness there where it was like, oh, by the way, Mr. Jokic, the guy who is a champion and keeps winning that MVP award over you, is right down the road. And the guy that at the time people, kind of felt like Joel was ducking. So Nick has shown this, willingness to even get, kind of needle his guy a little bit to get him to that next level. So, I think there's a natural friction at times between them. And even friction is probably the wrong word, but tension. Beyond that, I just think that the physical stuff remains very confusing to me. I was in France watching Joel, obviously had, some games where he didn't look great, finished very strong. But talking to Team USA people, the more important thing is he didn't miss a practice. He didn't miss a shoot around. He didn't miss a game. If he didn't play, it was because Steve Kerr chose for him not to play. So to go from that to left knee injury management being such a massive story this season, it feels like he had some kind of a setback in between there, and because he just obviously doesn't look like himself.
Yeah. I mean, look, and I would say this, it brings a little hollow for me when I hear Joel talking about being used improperly. I mean, he is as heliocentric as you can get without being, a 10 assists a game guy. And he was on a run before he got hurt last year with Nick Nurse and that offense that they were running. And he was on another MVP pace. So he has been used totally fine by Nick Nurse. And I think that to be fair to him, he looks awful physically. And I imagine he probably feels pretty defensive. Yeah. But, the things that Tyrese Maxey is bringing up, I mean, I don't want to be the guy who talks about leadership, but frankly, it's a little bit disappointing that Embiid with his status in the league, he's an MVP, he is the franchise, he's the process.
How long he's been in the league too, right?
Why isn't he at this point in his career, expected to lead by example to a certain degree? You don't hear about Kevin Durant, being a big rah-rah leader, but he shows up on time. And he's in every practice, and he's at many games as he can, even fighting through, his advanced age and injury history. So I just think that the standards have been lower for Embiid for years now. And finally, this is where, and it stinks that he's in Philly because it's going to get dark fast if he's not out there playing, with the fans. But I do think that it is nice to see that there are people within the organization trying to hold him to account before it gets too late. Because frankly, they had a really loud summer to come out and lay this dud, to start the year. And I start thinking to myself, okay, in your piece, you guys laid it out. Daryl Morey, Nick Nurse, they're safe for now. And we always say for now. But at what point are they not? And then at what point do you just start to look outside? Do we need to pivot? There's a lot of people who are very into Jared McCain and what he's done. And they see this as an opportunity for the franchise to just take a different direction. I don't even know what that looks like. No one's spelled it out in a way that makes any sense to me. But, something is going to have to change at some point. They either have to be better with what they've got, or they're going to have to improve outside, or people are going to go.
No, that's all on point, Dave. And I feel like to add to it, this is one of those stories for me that once it comes out, I feel like within the past 24 hours in my circles and just media, it's almost like we're kind of taking some blunt of criticism from people around the league who are, I'll just being totally honest with you, who were saying, man, you guys have been going easy on him for years. This has been happening for years. It's kind of an open secret that, some of these frustrations were there. And if you look at Philly and the question of could the coach or the GM be in trouble, I would probably contextualize it and say, if you go back, I forget the exact number, but, Joel has had a number of GMs, a number of coaches during his tenure. I think ownership wise, some of the conversation at that level has got to be, highlighting that backdrop and realizing that at some point it has to fall at his feet and just keep working on fixing that instead of thinking that you can just make a change elsewhere to try to solve it.
In terms of changes, obviously external also kind of means trades. And I think at some point you get to the point where you consider those trades, not just, the bigger picture trades, but just roster upgrades to give you a better chance this season. You also wrote about potentially the Nets being involved in, a sort of, I guess, fire sale of sorts, for a lack of better words.
Too good to tank, man.
too good to tank. Yeah. Do you think that's something that might materialize, I guess, from Brooklyn's perspective, and if Philly will be kind of knocking on the door anywhere else to see if there's anywhere to upgrade?
Yeah, I mean, that is the sense around the league, is that, for these contending teams or competitive teams, that there's a little bit of a kind of, one-stop shopping in Brooklyn, just a bunch of guys that aren't seen by rival teams as part of the Nets' future. Now, the Cam Thomas situation, I think it's fair to highlight, not only didn't get an extension done, but, my understanding was that kind of, possibility was, extinguished pretty quick in the process, that wasn't something they were looking to do. I think that's somewhat telling. Talented player, scoring the heck out of it, but, certainly not a guy who moves the ball. He's a gunner. So, Cam Johnson, you go down the list,
they've got
Nick
a lot
Claxton,
of really
Dennis
good guys,
Schroeder,
man.
Dorian Finney-Smith. Yeah, there's a lot. Right?
Bojan Bogdanovic hasn't even played, but that's another dude that, if you get him back out there. Now, in fairness to the Nets and GM Sean Marks, the indications on that side are that, that it's not going to be the fire sale that some people might think it's going to be. We'll see. You win a few games. You got Jordy Fernandez trying to make his way as a coach. And these, I'm just being honest, these are the stories and the parts of the job that are tricky this time of year because everybody's got competing agendas. Jordy wants good players because he's trying to do his thing as a coach. Sean, as they continue to kind of dig out of the James Harden, Durant, Kyrie Irving hole is trying to figure out what the future looks like. So the last line of that column said, that Sean is going to have a lot of possibilities to sort through at the deadline. I think that is a very fair and safe statement.
Yeah, they've been a team that has played every good team really tough. So, I mean, frankly, just personally, I hope they don't necessarily blow it up because I like a good team full of role players who overperform. And I think Jordy Fernandez, pretty good young coach. And so I'd like to see him get a chance.